I'm calling to order the meeting of the Rutherford County Regional Planning Commission for July 8th, 2024. I'd like to ask at this time that everyone please stand for our prayer and pledge of allegiance, and I'll ask that our county chairman and Planning Commission member Jeff Phillips to lead those prayers and the pledge.
Bow with me, please. Our Father in heaven, Lord, we're thankful for this day. We're thankful for the many blessings of life, and we're thankful for your promise of an abundant life. We ask that you be with those that are heavy on our hearts, and that you meet the needs in their lives and the lives of their families. God, we're thankful for our public safety servants, and we ask that you be with those, especially our local servants. We ask that you be with our armed forces, especially the ones that are deployed overseas. Give them strength, bring them home. We ask that you be with this commission as we do the business of Rutherford County, and the decisions that we make are in the best interest of all citizens of Rutherford County. We ask all this in Christ's name. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Secretary, I ask that we call the roll for determination of quorum.
Jim Averwater. Jeff Phillips. Present. Mike Cush. Present. Lee Bogle. Here. Charlotte P. Here. Trey Gooch.
Here. David
Jones. Chip Pinion. Marvin Whitworth. Jim Thompson. Here. Pattis Reed.
Here.
We have a quorum.
We do have a quorum. We ask now that we have a approval of our minutes for June the 25th, 2024. Mr. Vice Chairman Bogle.
Thank you. The minutes for the 25th meeting are found to be in good order. Therefore, I make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Second. Have second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Those minutes have been approved. Item 5, public comment period. Mr. Devasi.
No one signed up for that, sir.
We have no public comments at this time. Items withdrawn or deferred?
None, sir. Everything's on the agenda.
Nothing there either. We'll move then right into our new business. Item 7, these deal with rezoning, zoning ordinances, and amendment request. All rezoning, regulation, amendments request will be considered at the August 15, 2024 Board of Commissioner meetings unless deferred or withdrawn by the Planning Commission or applicant. Before we begin, I have a request from staff that we reverse item 4 and 5. Item 5 will move up to item 4. 4 move down to number 5. Reason is deal with some changes that may have to be made at those different ones, and it will work a lot better. So if that will suit the commission, we'll do that if there's no problem. We'll make those changes, just letting everybody know that we need to do that on our agenda. Moving then into item 1, we'll go with Aaron Minick for the River of Life Church, REZ 24016. Location is 8200 Safari Drive, Commissioner District 19, Romeo McMurray. Size of site is approximately 57 acres. Tax map 50, parcel 13.02. Existing zoning is light industrial. Proposed zoning is institutional. Mr. Damasi.
Yes, sir. Thank you, and good evening, everyone. As you stated, this property is located at 8200 Safari Drive. The River Church received special exception approval by the county's Board of Zoning Appeals back in July of 2018. A site plan for the church building was approved by the Planning Commission back in October of 2018. Following that, a revised site plan showing the location of a temporary meeting tent and office trailer was approved by the Planning Commission during their November 2020 meeting. The church has been operating in that facility since that time. We had a meeting with the applicant in May of this year where he stated the church was in the process of opening a K through 12 school. We explained to the applicant at that time that schools are classified as community education facilities, which are not allowed in the light industrial district. So we recommended rezoning the property to institutional, which does allow those uses, as well as a large community assembly use by right. In other words, if they were to expand to that point of needing the definition of a large community assembly over 500 people, they could do that without having to rezone the property. So this application is a result of that meeting. We included a concept plan with your agenda materials. It does show the 3 proposed portable school buildings to the west of the existing temporary tent facility. You also see a future 4th building also shown on the plan. School will utilize the existing parking area for the church during school hours. There's also an existing bathroom trailer on the property that was approved as part of the temporary church facility. The primary means of ingress and egress will continue to be onto Safari Drive as currently developed. Again, the existing parking area will serve the proposed school use. An engineered site plan will be required to be submitted for the addition of the school buildings, which we do have. Due to the size of the structures that are being proposed, it does fall under the requirements, falls underneath the requirements. It doesn't have to come through the Planning Commission for site plan approval. We can handle that at a staff level as it's currently proposed. Landscaping, the site, as you can see on the aerial photos, is heavily treed, and properties to the south are within the town of Smyrna, are industrial in nature. So a landscape plan was submitted as part of the original tent facility as well as the original building, and of course, any additional will be shown on the site plan that we do have, but most of what they have out there should be sufficient to cover any requirements that we have. Of course, our performance standards would require conformance to those for any non-residential use. We do feel as staff that the proposed zoning is more appropriate for the uses of the subject property. This is actually a down zoning in our opinion, so we do recommend approval of the application. That being said, you'll notice there are a couple of bullet points there under staff recommendation in our report regarding the layout of the site and a couple issues we wanted to bring to your attention. First being the temporary tent being utilized on a church, which was approved for occupancy back in September of 2021. Structural engineering reports submitted to staff stated that a reevaluation of the tent structure need to be performed after 2 years. We do have that. I'll let Ms. Bell speak more onto that. And the other, we was discussing this application with the applicant back in May. It was discovered that there were some portable office trailers, not the ones that they're talking about using for the school buildings, but some random trailers that were there being stored on the property, unrelated to any church activity. These were not shown on any of the site plans submitted to staff, nor was it approved activity. We do have a letter from the church that they submitted stating that the person is going to have those removed here probably within the next week or so. So they are making progress on those issues that we had. And I will say that these would have to be addressed during our site plan review, but like I said, they're currently making progress on those. So with that, we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions or comments for the staff? Commissioners? Not, we'll ask that the applicant come forward at this time, make a presentation. We'd like to have your name, address for our records, if you'll make that statement. Right here. Address the commission to come around to this side. Okay.
Good evening, Commissioners. Sorry, didn't quite have my bearings. My name is Emily Lamb. I'm with Thompson Burton Law Firm in Nashville, here on behalf of Aaron Minick and the River at Smyrna. I think staff pretty well covered everything. Thank you, Mr. DeMasi, for your presentation. I think they pretty well covered everything. This is, we've got a lot of support in the audience from our church and from our proposed school. This is a proposed school use that we're trying to open underneath through the church as a ministry and mission of the church. It will be K through 12. And prior to my involvement, Mr. Minick was working through the process, and once he learned that it was not a use that was permitted according to the county's determination that the use was not permitted under the church, he then involved me, and so we have been working with the county attorneys as well as staff to walk through all the process and necessary requirements for this. As Mr. DeMasi said, I think we meet the comprehensive plan. Any outlying issues with respect to other departments and other regulations that need to be met, we will certainly meet those and be in full compliance. We'll work through those in the site plan approval process. We have submitted the site plan and are working with staff on that administrative approval. We're happy to answer any questions that you have. We think that this is a great project for the county, for the city, and we're really excited about it. As I said, we have a lot of support. And we're here to do whatever we need to do. So we would respectfully ask for your approval and happy to answer any questions you have. Oh, I'm sorry. With respect to the two comments, as Mr. Demasi said, we have addressed both of those. We're going to have the trailers moved no later than July 15th, depending on weather, maybe sooner. And the other issue was the
structural.
Thank you. The tent. We have gotten an updated structural engineer report on the tent, as well as a letter that we even submitted this afternoon. So we've been working in a time crunch because Mr. Minick was not aware, as I said, of the regulations. And so we've been working in trying to expedite this and move things quickly. So things are kind of coming in fast and quick, and sometimes at the last minute. But we're getting everything in, and we hope to be able to open the school. Do you have any questions for us?
So this is a new school?
Yes, ma'am.
And how many students are you predicting to have?
Introduce yourself and your address.
I'm Aaron Minick, pastor of the church, and we're organizing the school. We are currently somewhere around 40 students. We can service probably close to 60, 70 max under the current setup.
Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The tent structure was approved 3 years ago, almost 3 years ago.
Yes.
In my mind, a tent is a temporary structure. How much longer are you going to be using a tent? Are you ever going to build a permanent building? And if so, when? As a planner, I like to look long-term in the future, and I want to know what those plans are and when they will be accomplished.
Sure. We have, our site is pad ready for the permanent structure. We're working towards getting in a place back to where we can make some financial moves at that level. 2018 is when we were approved through the BZA to get what we needed to build what we needed to build. We were in the process of starting to move dirt in March of 2020. That's when COVID hit. So we had some adjustments that we had to make and had to deal with the outcome of that. So that kind of shifted our plans a little bit, adjusted our congregation size. So we're in the process of trying to get back up to the place where we can start where we need to be on the building again. And we're taking donations even tonight, if you'd like to participate in that.
Thank you for that answer.
Yeah.
But I want a date. Give me some type of a date.
I wish that I could give you that. I don't have a specific date in which we're going to start again.
2025, 2026, 2030, 2040, 2050. Give me a date of some kind.
2025 would be ideal. I mean, later in 2024 would be awesome, but we're looking at a 10-month schedule once we order the steel and start pouring the concrete. Since we've already done all of the utility digs and everything is pad ready, all we have to do is cement and steel, which they said that's a 10-month process. So, you know, if we started next week, it would be 2025. So 2025 would be great, and I would love to, that would be a great goal to set. Mm-hmm.
And if I could just add one thing, this is definitely the short-term plan for us, is to get out of the temporary tent. As he said, we ran into issues with respect to COVID and fundraising, et cetera, congregation size, but that is in our short-term plan, and I think they're actively working towards that. Building and development sometimes does not go at the speed that we would like it to go, but I think that 2025 is the goal, and but that's, again, not a hard and fast, definite end date for us, but that's certainly our goal.
I got a question.
Commissioner Thompson.
I'm like other commissioner, 2018 to 2024, hoping we'll get kids in, we're pad ready. I'm a little confused. Are we going to approve it to be rezoned first and then approve the school opening second, or is all this one motion here?
The zoning to institutional, and I'll handle that. That zoning for institutional is to allow them the use of the school, the building that they would like to put on the They can't do the school use unless the property is owned properly for it. So this is kind of the first step in that. Now, we have an administrative site plan that has been submitted to our office. Now, we're not going to issue any permits or anything on that until they get the zoning approval, or else we'd be doing it in violation of our own ordinances, and we're not going to do that. But, so this is the first step to get them to where they want to be in that regard.
Just to help out from my perspective, I'm currently working on a football field out at Rockville, something simple as turf. And we have found out that you got two pieces to that. One's the cost of the job, and then the other's the cost of the line of credit to fund it. There'd be no way I'd be in favor of opening any kind of school if you don't have the proper funding and something that says we are now ready to make this happen. So if you're looking for a motion to rezone, I could support that, and I'd be glad to put that in form of motion based on staff comments. But as far as approving the school, I think you got to know that it's funded. I would not approve a temporary school, especially being we're 8 years
Yes, sir.
into this, okay?
And yes, sir, and we have the funding for the school. As I said, Mr. Minick, they had the funding and were taking the steps to open the permanent school, and then they hit a roadblock once they realized that there were some regulations that they were not in compliance with. So we have the funding. Once we hit that roadblock of rezoning, that's what we're here to do. And as Mr. DeMasi said, we've got our site plan submitted. Presumably, hopefully that will be approved administratively, and then we will open the school, but we do plan to open permanently.
But you're looking at operating it under a temporary condition even this next year?
Yes, sir, because at this point, we don't have the building permits.
Okay, and porta-johns and all that for 40 students?
It's a trailer, it's a bathroom trailer. It's what, we're currently using the property for the church. So we're just expanding ministry, and everything that's functioning for the ministries to happen, that's what the school will be using as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Thompson, we've got to give a comment period prior to we move into that point, and we'll do that at this time. If there's no other questions among the commissioners, and then we'll move back to that.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll now move into our comment period from those that are here this evening. Very simple process. What we'll do, if you'll notice, there is a little pad right up here on this, on what we call the well. You'll see there are red lights, yellow lights, and green lights. They're just like downtown. You got a green light, you can keep talking. Once you see a yellow light, that means slow down and prepare to stop. And when the red light comes on, that means stop. You'll have 3 minutes to present your comments. This is not a question and answer, so none of the commissioners will be answering your questions or anyone else. Just make your comment, whether for or against or whatever you have. It's not an argument period either. It's just for you to make your comments and how you feel about this project. And if you're hearing the same thing that someone else has presented, and if there's some of you want to just go together and say, hey, I'm for that too, and raise your hand and say, I'm for that, that's fine, which will save us a lot of time if there's several people here. But what we'll do it one at a time, let you come forward, and we'll begin right now. So if someone would want to start forward this way, and anybody else that's wanting to do this, when you see that yellow light come on, you come forward too, so we can keep this moving. So who would like to come forward first? Right back here. When you come up here, we'd like for you to present your name and address so we can have it for the record. Good evening.
Hello, I am Brandon Fisher of 925 Avery Valley Drive in Smyrna, Tennessee. I was wondering if y'all were aware of that being a floodplain. Back in 2010, there was at least 12 feet of water in that property that y'all are talking about building on. And if you build anything on it, it's just going to push that water back into our neighborhood. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else needs to come forward at this time? I see nobody else coming, so we are closing the comment period. Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, if you would allow me, I'll answer the gentleman's question about the floodplain. Yeah, sorry, first day with the new mouth here. The gentleman is correct. A lot of that property, as you can see on the map on the screens before you, is in the floodplain. You see a lot of that area in blue. That's 100-year floodplain area. That's kind of the orangish area. It says X. That's 500-year floodplain. And then that area, what we call the candy cane striped area, that's floodway. That's area that they really don't need to be developing. No one's allowed to develop in that. The area where they're looking to develop, even the permanent church building, is got a little portion in the floodplain, but not the floodway. Of course, any fill that they would do, they'd have to do compensating cuts so that they would not increase any of the runoff onto any adjacent properties. The area where the temporary facilities are is completely outside of the 100-year floodplain. So to answer his question, yes, the staff and the applicant are very much aware of the floodplain issues on that property and have already taken that into account.
Commissioners, comments, questions, or motion?
Mr. Chairman, if I could, our only job today is to make a decision to whether or not this piece of property is suitable for rezoning. It is my opinion that it is, and I move that we approve with staff comments.
Motion to approve and a second. Further discussion? Call the roll.
Jeff Phillips. Yes. Mike Cush. Yes. Lee Bogle. Yes. Charlotte P. Yes. Trey Gooch. Yes. Chip Pinion. Yes. Jim Thompson. Yes. Pattis Reed.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion has carried. Moving into item 2. George Patterson. Location is 1517 Mount Herman Road, Commission District, Robert P. Jr. Size of site is approximately 5 acres. Tax map 111, parcel 27. Existing zoning is residential medium density. Proposed zoning is commercial services. Mr. DeMasi.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. This application is a result of a zoning enforcement action. The applicant maintains the vehicles on this property. It was about car repair activity. He does maintain that the vehicles he was working on were his, but decided to seek rezoning of this property so that he could work on other people's vehicles. There is an existing shop, also owned by the applicant, at 1493 Mount Herman Road, located adjacent to the subject property, which is also zoned commercial services, the same zone that this applicant is asking for. His application states he would like to reconcile the zoning with the proposed use of the property. You'll see in your agenda packets that he has included a site survey of this property. He wants to separate about 5 acres from the parent tract for his business and combine it with an adjacent property right to the north that's also zoned, yeah, Mike's highlighting that area right there, also zoned commercial services. Mechanical work will be performed by either the applicant or his son who lives on the property. Typical office hours would be 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. No plans for expansion. The applicant's son, as I stated, does live in the existing house on the property. Homes, single-family homes are not allowed in the commercial services zone, but this would be a non-conforming situation or a grandfather type situation. So it would be allowed to remain as long as it was continually used in that manner. They would continue to access the property along Mount Herman Road. Any redevelopment of the site, of course, would have to comply with our development standards as well as landscaping and our performance standards. This property is located within the suburban belt character area, which does anticipate non-residential uses. There is existing commercial services zoning in the area. We have received a few phone calls about this. There are some neighbors out there that had some concerns about this. Most of the calls I've been receiving have been from some of the larger tract owners that surround the property. Mike, could you zoom out just a little bit? Thank you. The whole tract itself is a lot larger than what you're seeing here. It's about 44 acres or so. Of course, like I said, he's only looking to do about 5 acres when you look at the concept plan of the property. But most of the remaining land, the 39 acres or so, is still going to be zoned for residential purposes. So he's not looking to zone that, but I think that was one of the concerns from some of the folks who were calling in about this. So I know the applicant is present, so with that, we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners?
Doug, what's the business to the north?
Sorry?
What's the business to the north of the...
The same type of business.
Same thing?
Basically.
Mr. P.
To clear up all the lines, it's just the very small section by the road, not the large partial, correct?
Well, the concept plan, if you look at it, the line that he's actually looking to zone is approximately, I'd say, oh, there you go, yeah. So if you go back to the map after looking at that, kind of right in that area, yeah, kind of where Mike's kind of highlighting. That's the area he's asking to be zoned for commercial purposes, not the entire tract.
Anyone else? If not, we'll ask that the applicant would come forward this time if he has anything he'd like to say. Let us have your name and address also.
I'm George Patterson. My address is 1545 Mount Herman Road.
Any questions for Mr. Patterson?
Mr. Patterson, you just want to extend your business? Expand your business?
No, stay the same.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, we will now be open for our comment period. At this time, I think you heard, majority of you heard what we said with the last group, that if you have any comments that you would like to make concerning this particular action, you'll come forward. You'll have 3 minutes to express your feelings, either for or against, and follow the red lights there, and we'll go that direction. We'll ask that whoever would like to come forward first, come forward this time. Give us your name and an address.
My name's Bart Myers. I live on Weeks Road, 1550 Weeks Road. Mainly, I think I have more of a question than anything. After receiving the letter, it was unclear about what exactly out of Mr. Patterson's land was going to be rezoned. It said 5 acres, but it did show the map as the whole entire place, so it didn't place it on the letter I had. But there's an access road off of Weeks Road that runs back to Mr. Patterson's property. I just wanted to make sure that if he does do that commercial, that is not going to be an access point to the property that's being rezoned commercial. Trying to restrict on that side of Weeks, it's a lot of, well, it's all residential and farm. You know, it's already a kind of a cut through, a lot of traffic on there because of Joe B. Jackson, Amazon, and things like that. We're not looking for any more traffic, and especially commercial traffic that would be coming on that side to access whatever the businesses are on Mount Herman. But there is a access right away Mr. Patterson has, and I was just concerned about the use of it to get to that property. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
I'm Charles Corley. I live 1380 Weeks Road. I joined that piece of property back in the back, and like Bart Myers says, he's got it mapped out all the way back behind me, and I'd rather not have that commercial back in there because I joined my property back there. and I'm afraid if we get commercial, then my taxes will probably go up, and I'm paying enough taxes now. So I'd rather not have it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Mr. P? Yes, sir. Your name and address.
Dan Mitchell, 1459 Weeks Road. I think a lot of us moved there to be in the country and not have a lot of industry that close in our back door. And it's creeping on pretty fast. It's coming along. You know, Walmart is moving everything back. I just would like to keep the quality of life that we paid extra to be away from all that sort of thing. So, and I've noticed I have a neighbor with a business with a lot of cars, and I don't know if they're going to try to reach on that too. So I just things I'm concerned about.
Thank you, sir. Chairman P. Welcome.
Thank you. Robert P., 4047 Bivens Hill Road, Reedville, Tennessee. I'm the commissioner in the 4th District, which this is located in. And I'm here tonight to tell you I'm a bit frustrated. I got a call from Mr. Patterson, seemed like a really nice guy. And I told him the same thing I tell everybody that calls and asks. I said, talk to your neighbors. As long as your neighbors are okay with this, I'll be okay with this in most cases. Unfortunately, Mr. Patterson, you haven't talked to your neighbors. And I started getting some calls from them concerned about exactly what was happening. The letter, as one of these guys stated, shows the whole property. Mike, could you cut out the 5-acre part that he's talking about? I think I saw it, but I just want to make sure. What's frustrating to me about this, I think this could probably have been resolved had Mr. Patterson sat down with his neighbors and talked to them, told them what he wanted to do and find out what their concerns are. Have you got it, Mike?
Yeah, it's this little area. It would be this open area here, about approximately this. There will be a line right here. That would be the 5 acres.
And the remaining part that's left there, what is it zoned?
It is.
It's zoned RM. It would be, yeah, the current, that's currently zoned now, the whole property, it would remain that way.
So it would stay the same?
Yes.
The problem I've got is the fact that these guys hadn't had a chance to sit down and talk about this and try to get it worked out among them. You know, when I've got constituents, especially people that border the property that's being proposed to have a change, you know, I want them to be satisfied. So my recommendation tonight is for you to deny this and let Mr. Patterson sit down and talk to his neighbors, see if they can work out something. But until that happens, you know, if this comes to the county commission, I would be recommending denial until something gets resolved with these neighbors here. And that's not trying to reflect bad on Mr. Patterson, but you're going to need to talk to your neighbors and try to get this worked out if you can. And thank you.
Anyone else? Not seeing anyone else coming forward. We're closing comment period now. Commissioners.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Doug, in your opening comments, I believe I heard you say this was a result of a zoning infraction?
Correct. That's right.
Or Tanya, can you explain what that was?
I can. We just got complaints that there was commercial activity, auto repair, et cetera, going on in the business without, on the property without approval.
So the entire property right now is zoned RM,
Correct.
right?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, here's where I guess I'm trying to connect the dots. Mr. Patterson came up and said he's not really trying to expand the business, so my common sense question would be, why does he need the additional 5 acres of commercial? Why, I don't know how many acres that, I guess where he's currently using the car repair or whatever the commercial activity he is currently doing, how many acres that involves. But you know, could you not just add 1 more acre to that if he's not going to expand, as he says? Instead of requesting 5 acres, request 2, request 3. And I guess this leads to my next question. If the remainder of this 40-some acres is remaining residential, and there's only 1 long flagged lot entrance, wouldn't it be better if at some point in time this develops into a subdivision to have an egress and ingress both on weeks on the long flag lot and then an exit in the back here on this road as well, on both roadways? So you wouldn't carve out a piece of commercial property right there for a future roadway entrance or exit for the remainder of the 40-some residential acres of property.
I mean, it's, I think these are questions, and it's kind of get back to what Commissioner P. was talking about. No, he had asked for a denial. Another possibility maybe just to ask for a deferral of this.
Yeah.
That way we could have a sit down with the applicant, and the applicant would have an opportunity to go talk to the neighbors to kind of work out a more maybe acceptable alternative to 5 acres. Maybe he only needs a couple acres total.
Yeah.
I mean, and we could discuss the other. I don't really know what the development potential is of that whole property as far as soils and water availability, those kind of things. That wasn't really discussed at all, but that would give us an opportunity to look more into some of that.
Okay. Well, I guess my thought is, would the property not have more value from a subdivision, from a market standpoint, if it had access from both roads? It would make sense to me that it would.
Well, if this were being brought to us as a residential type development, we probably would want to see access off both roads,
Right.
you know, way in and multiple ways in and out. But we typically ask for that.
Yeah, so I'm thinking he needs to try and figure out a way to carve out a little sliver for an exit to keep part of that residential access. And if he needs a little bit of commercial property, he may not need the whole 5 acres. So I would perhaps make a motion to defer.
I have a motion to defer. Have a second.
One quick question, Mr. Chairman. Doug, can you facilitate that meeting?
Yes, sir. We can reach out with the applicant and get something scheduled. Yes, sir.
Motion to defer and a second. Further discussion? Call the roll.
Jeff Phillips. Yes. Mike Cush. Yes. Lee Bogle. Yes. Charlotte P. Yes. Trey Gooch. Yes. Chip Pinion. Yes. Jim Thompson. Yes. Pattis Reed.
Yes.
Motion carries.
So it will be deferred. Moving into item 3, Clinton Carter, REZ 24-018, location is Midland, Fosterville Road. Commissioner District 6, Jonathan Beverly, size of sites approximately 71 acres, 10 acres to be rezoned. Tax map 180, parcel 1506, existing zoning is residential low density RL, proposed zoning, planned unit development, PUD, for explosive storage. Mr. DeMasi.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. The applicant's proposing to rezone about 10 acres of this property to a planned unit development for commercial explosive storage. The site is actually a relocation of an existing property or type facility that is located just to the northeast, if you will, about 2 miles off of Shelbyville Pike. According to the information in the applicant's pattern book, and that pattern book is on your iPads, the development will consist of a 1,200 square foot single-story portable office building and associated gravel parking area, bulk storage area, a magazine, trailer magazines, and gravel truck turnaround areas. There will be no development signage on Midland Fosterville Road. A chain link fence would be provided to secure the 10-acre area, and the applicants proposed to relocate to this, the applicant proposed to relocate to this property due to the site meeting requirements of the Federal Bureau of, ATF, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. The applicant has intentions of using the existing structure on the property. We did, for storage, I did inform them at the time that any kind of use of this building other than for agricultural purposes would have to meet building codes, so they are aware of that. When staff originally met with the applicant, they were looking at the possibility of heavy industrial zoning. After discussions, staff said we felt more comfortable with a planned development approach due to the range of different uses allowed in the heavy industrial zone. The applicant did agree to amend their application to a planned development. Again, I will call your attention to the pattern book that is included on your iPads. The plan does show areas to be cleared, structural locations. They did have a revised plan actually in the updated pattern book. The first one they had was a little difficult to read, but the newer one is easier to make out. Access to the property will be along Midland Fosterville Road as shown. The applicant is proposing to enlarge their driveway to 30 feet to accommodate larger vehicles accessing the property. We have asked the applicant to provide a site triangle analysis of the entrance onto Midland Fosterville Road to see if there are any site distance issues. They did submit something as part of the pattern book. We may need something a little more detailed to that if this gets approved at the site plan stage, but for now I think that does suffice. Landscaping, open space is not required for non-residential plan developments. Type 3 buffers are typically found between industrial and residential uses. This site is heavily treed, as you can see from the aerial photos. And of course, the site can use existing plantings as part of their buffer requirements. Most of the material, as you see on the aerial photos, will remain, except those areas that need to be removed for the driveway and the storage areas. The pattern book does state that the adjacent property owners use the northern adjacent fields for cattle grazing and have requested that the vegetative buffer not be placed on that property line so that they can access the property. Of course, again, an engineered site plan would be required showing all of this should this application be approved. As I stated earlier, this is to relocate an existing explosive storage facility located off of Shelbyville Pike. That property has been used in that manner since about 2017. We're not aware of any issues that they've had operating that facility. Based on our comments, we didn't really receive any phone calls about this. I think I got one phone call. Well, no, I got a couple, actually. There was one gentleman who was representing a property owner, several of the large tracts around the subject property, didn't have any issues with anything. So with that, we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. The applicant is present to answer questions as well.
Commissioners, questions for staff?
Doug, can you refresh our memories on, we're looking at it from a zoning perspective, but there are certain criteria they have to meet in order to be able to do that, and certain approvals that have to be done before
Correct.
Occupancy could be.
Yes, sir. They would have to, of course, have an engineered site plan showing everything. We've dealt with a couple of these kind of facilities. This one where it currently is, and another one off of the northern end of the county. So not only do they have to meet county requirements as far as zoning, but also, fire code, building code issues, but also federal codes. The applicant can probably speak a lot more to those because they're probably a lot more familiar with those than I am.
Any other questions, commissioners?
Kind of outside my realm of any kind of expertise, Doug, but if you want to put this inside the city limits, what is required as far as clearance around such a facility as is.
Yeah, I would defer to the applicant on that, because there are distance requirements that do need to be adhered to when it comes to not just from surrounding properties and structures, but even from the structures themselves on the site. They have to have certain separation between the different magazines and storage areas.
Yeah,
I'll let that'd be a good question for the applicant.
Good. Yeah, my biggest concern would be a adjoining property owner all of a sudden get limited on what they can do because this facility gets built.
I think it's, and again, the applicant can speak more, I think it's more the structure as it is property line to property line, but I'll let them discuss that.
Other questions? If not, we'll ask that the applicant come forward this time. Good evening.
Clint Carter, 1485 Round Rock Drive, Murfreesboro.
My name's Casey Alexander, 8750 Nortonville Road, Dawson Springs, Kentucky. I work for Orca, Operations Manager for Kentucky, Tennessee, and I'm representing Clinton here for allowing us to proceed with this if possible. So, if any questions or comments, I'm here to answer them if need be.
I'll ask that question again.
All right.
What's the limitations as far as building something adjacent to this structure once you're built out?
Okay, so the property lines we're not really affiliated with, it's the structures. So we have regulations how close the structures are. So if we're within 2,000 feet of the closest inhabitable building, which is a building that's being used every day or lived in, or like it's not a shed or a barn or anything like that. So that regulates how much we can store on that property, if that makes sense. But as far as property lines and the adjacent owner, that has nothing to do with where we're at or what we do to their property lines.
So if I want to build a house next to that owned property, I need to be at least 2,000 feet away for you to be able to store?
Yes, if we have already zoned and built into that position, then yes, you would have to stay within that 2,000 feet. If you built one within 2,000 feet, then we would have to, ATF would make us regulate our storage to a lower capacity. And we have spoke to both neighbors, and he actually owns the property within the east side of us, and then Tommy owns to the west of us.
Is your explosives a two-part mixture, or is it actually dynamite and sticks?
No, nothing. We do not manufacture on this or do any blasting at all. So we have magazines where we store, and then it's a two-part deal where it has to be mixed on the job site. So we do not have what you would call explosives on our property without the manufacturing.
Thank you.
Yes. Any other questions, comments? And I'll just like to say, like Doug, thanks for your announcing that this is a relocation. We are 2 miles away. We've been there since 2017, and to my knowledge, we haven't had any complaints with whether it be the community, the law enforcement. We are highly regulated with the ATF, the EPA. We are very, very safe. Like, number one is safety is what we do, and we wouldn't do anything to jeopardize that to the community. We have done lots of community help to every place that we have been in, from planting trees to tornado repair and all that stuff. So, we would love to have the opportunity at this, and we would gladly repay on however we could.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Carter, you own the property on Shelbyville Highway. I remember us talking about this back in 2017. Do you own that property on Shelbyville Highway? And did you own it in 2017 when it was rezoned?
I don't own where the current site is right now. I don't own that.
Who does?
Buddy Gamble.
Yes.
Okay, very good. So you just lease that property?
Yes, we've been leasing it since 2017, and our main goal is, Buddy, for one, he has plans for the future for his property, and he will not do anything long-term. So we've been a year-to-year deal since the day we've been there, and we can't do anything as far as long-term movement, developing, like as far as like the fencing and the money and the funds, because we don't know if we're going to be there the next year. Now we're down to month by month, and you know he has construction in his junkyard and stuff like that, and I feel like it'd be safer to our employees. And another thing is, it's not going to be a big high risk or traffic. We only have 6 employees at that one location, so there'll be one trip in, one trip out daily. So it's pretty much just a copy of where we're at now and pasting it 2 miles away, if that makes sense. Thank you. You're welcome. All right.
Is the 2,000 lineal foot barrier or distance from magazine to inhabitable structure, is that based on your maximum magazine storage, or does it?
Yes.
So 2,000 is the maximum?
That's the maximum, yes, correct. We can store, but the closer the structure, the less we store.
Okay.
So.
Right, but 2,000 is absolutely
Yes,
the furthest
2,000.
distance out for maximum storage?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Just make sure I'm hearing what you say. If a house I own next to this, because looking at the scale there, 0 to 1,500 feet, you're going to adjust your storage if I own next to this and I build me a house there. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yes, we will have to. If let's say land changes ownership and a guy comes in, buys the property adjoining to us, if we don't have some sort of encroachment contract where we pay them not to build, we would have to adjust our capacity to be within legal to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Doug or Josh, does that make sense to you guys too? We would approve, if we were to approve this, they meet the 2,000 feet, but if somebody bought adjacent property and wanted to develop that property and could develop that property, it would affect the decisions we're making tonight?
Yes, sir. So what they stated was correct. So obviously their industry is heavily regulated by the ATF. We'll conduct our reviews and inspections as well to ensure that they stay in compliance with their distances and setbacks and everything like that. But should that neighboring properties be developed, that would impact them in the sense that they would have to adjust their operations to meet whatever new development or new buildings are constructed. So like he said, they'll make arrangements to try to prevent that to the best of their ability for the purposes of their business, which is normal. But we have a number of these sites in the county. These operations are, like I said, heavily regulated, but they're very safe. The components that they have on site are in their storage form, very safe, very stable. I get very little heartburn for these types of facilities because of the level of regulation and the oversight that the ATF and our office has. Yes, sir.
Thank you. We'll now go into a comment period. The comment period's open. If there's anyone here who would like to voice their opinion, either way, you'll have 3 minutes. I'd like for you to come forward, give us your name and address, and ask that you come forward at this time to do so. I don't see anyone, so we'll close the comment period. Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we accept this and subject to all staff comments and approve this rezoning.
Motion to approve. Have a second. The comments.
Can we add to include staff comments and fire marshal comments?
I think that's all under staff comments.
heard
Yeah,
that.
we're all
Okay.
staff, so
Okay.
that's fine.
They're all staff. Thank you, Trey.
That's why he sits here.
All right, Josh, can I ask, can you give us 30 seconds of training here?
Yes, sir.
If it's a two-component explosive, I'm assuming there's still both components on site, typically. They're just housed separately in different magazines or bunkers, right?
Yes, sir. In a nutshell, they'll have to house those separately. So things like their initiators, their blasting caps, their boosters, their main charges, all that stuff gets separated out. Even in transit, it's separated. So even the a lot of previous projects like this, we've had concern. What about these trucks rolling down the road and one flips over? Even those components, when it's stored separately, they're very stable. Commercial explosives are extremely stable in their storage
So what's
forms.
the big deal then about the 2,000 feet boundary?
It's a federal regulation as well as a fire code requirement. In the event of a worst case scenario, human mistakes, it would provide the safest condition for if something bad really happened.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'm sorry, I probably should have asked while the applicant was up here, but have they talked and have we heard from the Commissioner Beverly in that area?
I believe they've spoken to Commissioner Beverly. I don't think I've had any conversation
shaking their head
specifically
up and
about
down.
this. I know that Commissioner, actually, prior to the application, we talked a little bit about it, and I think that's kind of what led it down to the plan development route. And I do want to kind of just give props to the applicant on this. They really did their homework on this. They went to a lot of the property owners around there. Even before they came to us, they had already been talking to a lot of the property owners out there. So they did a good job on that, which I think is evidenced by the fact that nobody really has any concerns in the neighborhood about it.
Knowing Commissioner Beverly, he checked on it too, so I'd say that's been covered. All right. With no further questions or comments, we'll vote on it. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, it does carry. Moving now, we're actually moving into item 5, which we have moved to the position of item 4, which deals with SEC Incorporated for Swanson Development, which is REZ 24015, location on 7200 Manchester Pike, Commissioner District 6, Jonathan Beverly. Size of site, it's approximately 56 acres, tax map 151, parcels 3436. Existing zoning is residential median density, RM. Proposed zoning is planned unit development, PUD, for residential subdivision and commercial services, CS. Mr. Bossy.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. This application was actually going to be on the Planning Commission's June 10th meeting last month, but was removed from the agenda by the applicant prior to the meeting. We have updated the staff report with the changes made to the pattern book, and there is a letter also with the staff report that's on your iPads, kind of outlining some of the changes, but I'll go over them briefly here. There are two elements to this request. The first is to rezone about 46 acres from medium-density residential RM to a planned unit development to create a residential subdivision, which they are calling the Cove. This will consist of 85 single-family detached lots on about 45 acres-ish for a density of 1.88 dwelling units per acre. The minimum lot size is 7,500 square feet with an average size of 10,000. Page 11 of the pattern book shows a breakdown of the various lot sizes proposed in the development. All lots are proposed to have a minimum lot size, lot width, of 65 feet at the right-of-way line, 55 feet for a cul-de-sac. All homes would be a minimum of 3 bedrooms and for sale. Home elevations would include brick on the front, brick to grade on the sides with hardy or vinyl available on the sides and rear. Homeowner association would maintain all of the common areas. There's additional information in the pattern book, which I'm sure we can discuss later, and the applicant, I'm sure, will make a presentation. The second element is to rezone the remaining of that property, which is about 10 acres or so along Manchester Pike, which they're proposing to rezone from RM to commercial services. They have not identified any specific tenants at this point, but CS does allow for a variety of retail uses. The RM zone requires, as we know, a 15,000 square foot minimum lot size, which is a gross density of 2.9 units per acre. If you were to take the area of the proposed residential development, about 45 acres, you could get a maximum gross density of 131 units. Now, we all know that you're never going to get that. That's in a perfect world. So this doesn't take into consideration septic, step areas, rights-of-way easements, those kind of things. Most RM developments have an overall density of somewhere between 1 and 1.5 units per acre. So if you use that number, it gives you somewhere between 45 and 67 units. Again, this particular development's looking at, I believe, right about 85 single-family units, so a little bit more than you could get out of just the base zoning. The primary means of ingress and egress would be onto West Gum Road. Entrances would incorporate 2 travel lanes for proper circulation into and out of the development. A traffic study has been submitted for our review. One of the big things that you can see with this development, although no recommendations were made just specifically for the development, you can see what they're proposing to do here. They're proposing to actually realign West Gum Road at the intersection with Manchester Pike. So what you would see is they would close off the existing portion right there that Mike's highlighting. A new road would kind of end in a cul-de-sac. There's a couple properties there that would have to be readdressed, but that could be done at a later time. But they are proposing dedicated left turn lanes there at Manchester Pike and the new realigned West Gum Road. The reason we wanted to bring this application first is because the improvements that are being proposed for this development would have an impact on the next application. So we didn't have them that way originally, so we flip-flopped them because it would make more sense to have this one first to find out what recommendation was made here. That would give us a better idea of any improvements that the next application would have to make if those improvements on this application were not approved. As far as landscaping, a pattern book does show a minimum of 10 feet of landscape area between public parking and all property lines. Staff has informed the applicant that a minimum of a type B buffer is required by the zoning ordinance between commercially zoned property and the residential portion of a planned development. Now, of course, we would get a crack if this were to be rezoned. We would get a crack at each of these lots here from a site plan standpoint on the CS area, just because of the fact that they would all have to come back with development plans for that. Residential plan developments are required to provide at least 10% open space, half of which is usable as defined in our ordinance. They are proposing about 5 acres or 11% being set aside with this PUD request. Features would include a pavilion, walking trail, dog park, and open play lawn. Again, I would refer your attention to the pattern book for any further details on that. With that, we've had a lot of discussions, as we all know, about smaller lot developments, and we've been having some work sessions on some possible changes. We did make the kind of the appetite or atmosphere, if you will, of the Planning Commission and Board of Commissioners on plan developments known to the applicant and their design team during our pre-application meeting, as well as during the neighborhood meeting and even prior to submittal. So they're well aware of the current environment that we're dealing with right now, but they chose to press forward with that. So with that, I know the applicant is present. Matt Taylor with SEC is here representing them, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have at this time.
Commissioners?
If I may. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Doug, in looking at that intersection of West Gum, East Gum, and US 41, that's identified as a commercial node area from our previous plan, right? Or our current plan in that area or that general area?
No, not so much that. It's a little further down to the south where Epps Mill Road is. That's identified as a node.
Okay.
In the comp plan, this is shown as being in the suburban character area, suburban belt character area, but it's not identified specifically as a node in and of itself. Now, Manchester Pike is identified as an urban style corridor, but West Gum is not.
And the only reason I ask that is because I know typically we try to align as many roads as we can, and that being already aligned into a cross would, for signalization purposes, future.
Sure.
Just thinking ahead to the future. I'm not opposed to it. I'm just curious.
Right, yeah, it wasn't identified as a node. Now, there is, like you said, the roads do line up, and Mike can probably talk more about this more intelligently than I can, but when you look at the intersection when the aerial draws, it's not a perfect 90-degree. It's kind of an awkward intersection. So honestly, having the realignment with a 90-degree turn lanes and everything is actually an improvement over, you can kind of see it on there right now.
Development-wise, I understand it too. It makes sense that way. And if I'm thinking right, I know it's more city, but Shores was done that way as well.
Yes, this
to
would be
fix
very
kind of a
similar to
similar
that.
problem
Yes,
there.
very similar to
Okay.
that.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, commissioners? Comments? Commissioner?
You know, I've been kind of at a loss on this from all the discussions we've had, but this seems like to me this PUD is coming up, and we already know we got heartburn with it. I'm looking at where the cars go in at a distance showing typical inside of 16 foot wide. I'm looking at a 35-foot setback. When is that study going to be out to us as far as what we have discussed for the last several weeks? When's the study supposed to be finalized on? Because I know there's no way that you can stack cars in here the way this is showing. We've already had that discussion. Has the power company and the water company looked at this? Are they on board that, hey, we have no problem with this?
Well, I know that CUD's looked at this. I think they're more comfortable with a 65-foot minimum than they are on some of the things that we've approved in the past. Now, that doesn't mean that, they're just necessarily in love with the concept, but I think they're happier with that than they are with some of the ones that we've approved in the past. But, I'm not to put Jason on the spot, but Jason Laxton is here from CUD. He'd be, I'm sure, happy to answer that.
Well, to me, until we know more about what we've already talked about, I don't know why we're looking at any more of these until we get something more solid, because I went out today to 3 different subdivisions and I measured driveways. And on this one, if I'm looking at this right, it's showing a setback of 35 feet. We've got 2 cars in the garage and we got 4 cars on the drive. It looks pretty. It looks like they'll go in there, but it won't. My Ford 150 is 19 feet long. Can't get 2 of them stacked in there like that. And I've got some pictures that I took showing the sidewalks are blocked. People can't use the sidewalks because they're blocked. And I'm gonna throw that out there. To me, it seems to me as a planning commission, we should be doing just that and not having any more like we've had heartburn over. So that's my 2 cents worth. I'd be open to any comments when we're going to have something to really go by that we can all live with.
Well, and to help at least further the discussion on that, we're going to have another work session after our next day meeting to continue with the progress on that.
Doug, I assume your main heartburn, considering staff's not really wanting to make a favorable recommendation, is related to what we've seen, recently, throughout the county on some of these, and being in the utility industry and understanding it, I definitely concur and get this. But is there anything else we're missing from your perspective on the non-favorable recommendation?
No, I don't think so. I think based on all the discussion we've been having on plan developments, and like I said, they knew what they were getting themselves into when we had our original meeting on this, and then when we had the neighborhood meeting, and then even prior to them submitting it, I told them all the same thing. I said, you know what the appetite is right now, you know what the atmosphere is right now with these. Is basically, this is probably not a good idea to submit this right now. They wanted to move forward with it. And that's, to your point, Mr. Thompson, we can't stop them from applying, obviously, short of some sort of a moratorium on these, which doesn't seem to be necessary right now because most folks have, we haven't just had a whole lot of meetings about these, but even the ones we've had, we've told people it's just not, there's no point in applying right now. And most of those have heeded that. So.
Yeah, I went by and looked at this piece of property this afternoon. It's a beautiful piece of property to develop, no doubt about it. But I think I've got more questions than I have answers based on previous discussions we've had. This just doesn't make sense. We're having this conversation when we already know it's not working.
Commissioners? No more questions or comments. I'll call the applicant up. I believe it's Matt instead of Rob.
Well, you get the uglier version, so I think it is. Matt Taylor from SCC at 850 Middle Tennessee Boulevard here in Murfreesboro. Commissioner Thompson, you're right. We have heard these conversations. We haven't heard any resolution to those, but what we have heard is that some of our past PUDs have had too narrow lots. And so where we have seen those, in my opinion, what I've heard is when they are in that 55-foot range. And so my client was very deliberate about, hey, we want to be in that 65-foot range, which I think is some of the suggestions inside the existing PUD documentation that we put out there is at 65 feet, that is freeing up space for the utilities. You know, the front setback and the driveway width, if you'd like to see something different there, my client has a long history of working with the county, the city, the community in general. I think they'd be happy to widen those, or if we need to push that setback back a little bit so you feel comfortable with getting 2 cars in there. I will say that the 16-foot wide is a pretty standard industry standard. The 35-foot, we've been using that in a lot of locations. If you'd like a little deeper, a little wider, I'm sure that we could accommodate that. Some of what my applicant has also heard is that, you know, the county tax base needs some help, and so that's why about 20% of the property with this application is dedicated to commercial uses. We don't know who those users are today, but the Swansons have a long history of developing those properties themselves or bringing users in. We also have heard a lot of conversation about roadways and making sure we're developing on appropriate roadways. So one of the first stops that my client made when he bought this property was with Mr. Brooks to talk about Gum Road. And so one of the first commitments he made was that we would go in there and widen Gum Road because it is narrow in places. Furthermore, as we got into it, we identified this angle of Gum and Manchester and worked closely with staff to say, hey, we think this needs to be realigned to create a safer situation in the future as the traffic grows in this area. While we were at neighborhood meetings, we heard about there's a blind spot on Gum Road, and my client has made the commitment inside the book that we would take care of that blind spot. It's about where we tied down this realignment of Gum Road anyway, and so us as engineers, we would have to take care of that when we got into redesigning that. And so additionally, we have conducted those traffic studies. We've got the three-lane intersection at the realigned Gum. We've also got dedicated turn lanes out on Manchester Highway into the new Gum Road. We have shared this concept of this realignment with TDOT, and they're very happy with that realignment. Their only question was to make sure our tapers and everything tied back down before we get to the existing Gum Road, because that side will be a while before it gets realigned. If it does ever, I'm not sure what will happen on that side. So we've tried to hear some of those things. I know that it's not a 2-acre lot or, whatever it is that we decide that we want, but I don't think we have those answers right now. And so my client tried to listen to what had been said and incorporate those into this program booklet.
Questions or comments for the applicant?
Now, one thing I should have said is about 25% of these lots are 80 feet wide, so they're not all 65. We've got a lot of varying depths. Some of our lots are about 120 deep, some of them are 300 feet deep, so there's a wide variety in here, and we've really just, with the PUDs, you have to set minimums, just like you do in your normal zoning, and so that's what we've done. But we've got a wide variety that we've shown inside this book to try to address a lot of the concerns that we have heard over the past couple years of backyards or front yards or lot widths.
Okay. Thank you, Matt.
Sure.
All right. We'll now have it for our comment period. It's open now. Anyone would like to make comments on these, either for or against, whatever comments you may have, you'll have 3 minutes. We ask that you come forward at this time. Have your name and address, please.
Jim Lindquist, 4525 Rucker Christiana Road, Christiana. I'm here representing Gethsemane Apostolic House of Prayer. Our property line, if you cross Manchester Pike, our property line aligns right with the property line that's being developed. We're on the, I would consider that, I guess, the west side going towards Murfreesboro. And we've been there, the church has been there for 50 years. The building's 100 years old. And we have a very small, if anybody's ever driven by there, we've got a very small area in front of the building that we have parking spots for, and then you're on the road. And if we're afraid that with the retail concept in front, that they've talked about, those 10 acres, where if they would decide, and I know it's a state issue instead of a county issue, I believe, but we're worried about them putting in turn lanes at the far end of that near where our building is. And if they need to put in, because you're coming off of a 55-mile-an-hour road, so it's going to be hard to have no turn lanes into this retail area that they're talking about. So what we would like to do is just find out about that. Now, as far as the project itself, we're not against it. We're not against it. When you're a church, you want people to be able to be within walking distance of your church. And, you know, development is going to happen any way you look at it. It's a great spot, and I think that, you know, it's just a matter of time before everything moves out a little bit farther. And I just am worried about that area right there. Oh, by the way, I'm the deacon at the church. I apologize. The whole thing is that if that area at that end of the retail has to have some kind of turn lane come into it, we're afraid of it being able to take some of the property. And if that's the case, there's no way that we can have the road widened anymore at that point without affecting the church. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to come forward? Yes, sir.
Chairman Commission, Joe Swanson III, 1188 Park Avenue. I want to thank you all for being here tonight. Jim, if we need to deepen, like Matt said, if we need to deepen our driveways, widen our driveway entrance, we're more than happy to do so. We start at 16, we typically taper those up, catch corner garage, corner garage. Any other questions for me?
Let me jump in there, Joe, just a minute, and I appreciate you being here. I don't think we got a better group of folks than you guys have got historically through the years. I've known your family for God only knows how long. I know Matt's trying to do it. The issue that I think that we're up against is we've gotten some of these out, approved 2 or 3 years ago, and we're now still dealing with them, and we know it's just a heartburn for everybody involved. And one of the things for me, when I go through a subdivision and I see cars parked out on the road in multiple facets because there's not enough room in a driveway, or you can't walk, you got sidewalks and the vehicles are sitting out on the sidewalk because there's just not enough room in that distance. So that's where I was going tonight. We've talked about this, I know, for 3 months, and I think that before we just keep digging ourselves a hole and not dealing with it, you're the right person to help us deal with it as well. I think we can get to where we need to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Swanson, if I'm not mistaken, several years ago we approved a subdivision that looked a lot like this on Woodbury Highway. Am I right or wrong?
We've got one on Braidable Pike, Fox Camp, that's
Braidable, not
similar.
Woodbury.
Yes, sir.
Is that built out?
We're currently under construction now.
It was very similar to this?
Yes, sir.
Doug, have we received any type of feedback on that development? If I remember right, it looks a lot like this particular development. As far as the commercial development or any complaints about people who bought there as it relates to lot sizes?
As far as the lots, like Mr. Swanson was saying, they're still in development phase of that. Now, that had a couple of, that had a single-family element and a townhome element. The single-family element was actually a minimum 10,000 square feet, as I remember. They came back at a later time and actually zoned a portion to commercial services, kind of like they're proposing now. There have been a lot of concern. I think what Mike wants to kind of jump in and talk about as far as there's been a lot of drainage issues, some drainage concerns there. Mike, I'll let you kind of talk more in depth about that. But the lot sizes that you're talking about Fox Camp, they were larger than what we proposed here.
But to answer your
that
question,
I mentioned, the lot sizes are a little larger than these lot sizes. Thank you. I'd also like to compliment Mr. Swanson and his development company. They're local, and that's the type of people that I like to support as often as we can. But these particular developments out in rural areas have really begun to give our county heartburn as it relates to feedback that we're getting from residents, especially out in rural areas. And we're taking a hard look at the future and what that is. That's what the discussion going on. And I know you're pretty much aware of that, but I'd still like to compliment you and your family's business and what you've meant to this community over the years. Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Thank you, sir.
So, Doug, our current subdivision standards, refresh my memory, would allow these width lots as our subdivision standards are written now. Is that true or not?
Would allow this width of a lot? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Well, the way that the ordinance currently reads, you have to have at least 50 foot at the road.
Okay.
Now, you have to have the minimum lot width is measured at the front setback line. That has to be at least in the RM zone, it has to be at least 75 feet. Now, very rarely do we see just a regular conventionally zoned RM subdivision have 50 foot at the road. Generally, they're 80, 75, 80, whatever. They're the whole width. They're kind of like what you'd say postage stamp lots. They try to do, especially on these step system type lots. You'll see 80, 85, 90, 100 feet sometimes.
Okay.
But the minimum in the ordinance for road frontage is 50 foot with the lot width being measured at the setback, which is 75 for RM.
Okay, but if you submit as a PUD, then there's debate there, right?
Right. We still, I mean, most of what we see is really the lot width. We don't see anybody try to go below. We did see one development one time try to go below 50 feet of frontage,
right,
and that got shot down. But the lowest I think we've ever approved probably is with Southern Harmony with the 53-foot lots. Of course, those are private roads.
Right.
But on a public road, I think the least we ever did was 55 feet.
Okay. So in a nutshell, they're not asking for anything we haven't done in the past. We have just seen that in the past, things aren't working out like we'd like, and we're in the process of developing a new standard, perhaps,
correct,
that would address certain minimum lot widths and setbacks. So we're in that process right now.
That's correct.
So legally, they're not submitting anything that doesn't meet the standards. It's just it's in a gray area at this point.
Well, from that standpoint, as far as do we have a finished product for the PUDs, no, not yet. Now, what they are asking for as a plan developed, they are asking to vary some of the typically required design requirements, like the minimum lot width at the setback line. The setbacks for the front being 35 as opposed to 40, the side setbacks being 7.5 as opposed to 10 like it usually is.
Right.
So they are asking for, I wouldn't say variance, they're asking for some changes as part of their development. Variance, I think of BZA, Board of Zoning Appeals. So they're not asking for that, but they are asking to vary the development standards to help increase, the density of what they could get on this.
And in the past, we've granted others that similar request?
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Thompson brought this up, and I'm going to ask this question. I can think of no better person besides the representative of the Swanson group with the knowledge and the history that they bring. Matt Taylor and others sat with us at our last workshop. I think it is important for us to grab all the knowledge we can from industry and experts, design engineers' input, our input as planners, Joe's as a developer. I think everybody's input is important to help us get to the end game. And we need to understand, we would like to see wider, driveways, deeper driveways. We would like to see a lot of things, but we need folks like Matt and Joe to tell us, well, that looks great on paper, but here's the practicality why we can't do that. Or we can do that, but that dollar number is this. And if we do that, you got to give up this, which means if you need more driveway, you're giving up less backyard. So what do you want? There's a yin and the yang for everything, right? So we got to play that balancing act. So as we have more work sessions, I would love to invite Joe and other developers to take part in those discussions. So that's why I wanted you to stay up there, Joe, to hear that. And if staff feels appropriate to offer you a invite to a work session, I would love for you to come. So thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the invitation.
Okay, well now, I think we got one more right back here.
I'm John Harney. I live at 6748 West Gum Road, and want to state for the record right off the get-go, we're not opposed to this development. The Swansons do a good job. SEC Engineering does a great job designing projects. We've done a lot of developments very similar to this across the county. The only reason I'm here is to make sure there's a good understanding about the changes that need to be made on Gum Road and the timing of those changes. Gum Road doesn't have but a 15-foot asphalt width, no shoulders, and almost no ditches. And probably 3 or 4 times a week, somebody has to run the edge of your tires off one side of the road to pass somebody. Now, there is a shallow blind hill about 1,500 feet off Manchester Highway that people, especially they're commuting through on Gum Road that don't live on Gum Road, they come over the top of the hill, and so we have to run off one side or the other a little bit to miss them. Now, the Swansons, I think, have already made the commitment through their plans to widen Gum Road, and I think they've committed to take that blind hill out. Our concern, and some residents that live on Gum Road that I've talked to, is that happen on the front end rather than on the second or third phase situation, because especially, and you tie this to the development that's coming next on the other side of the road, and those people will be commuting in here from wherever. So my concern is not about the development. I think it's well designed, and I do agree putting the new Gum Road north on the other side of the existing home is a smart idea. The Gum Road does come in at an angle. Been living there. My grandparents bought that place in '51, and I've been living there since '73. And you have to turn back over your shoulder to try to see what's coming from town side. So I think that's a smart idea to realign it to come out north of the house there. But, and we've done a lot of development over the years, just like the Swansons. I don't think it's fair to put all the work of redoing Gum Road on this development when you've got another one coming across the street that is going to create a tremendous amount of traffic, probably not all through the week, but at different times. So I think that's got to be fairly administered to be fair to both sides of it. But I want to see that Gum Road redevelopment, redesign, and done on the front end rather than on the back end or somewhere later on in the middle of the project. Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is Kathy Sharber. I'm at 7022 West Gum Road, and I've lived there more than 40 years, so I've really enjoyed the country. I am not against the project either, but I am against the commercial part because I think it's dangerous. As it would be a major, it would have to be a major improvement to the highway. There is a cross, I don't know if anyone's been out that way, where someone lost their life on that highway. I don't know, it's in the middle of the part that's zoned commercial, so I don't know the family, I don't know anything about that, I'm sure some of you do. I think that would have to be looked into. Also, I just think that's a terrible place for a commercial. You 5 minutes one direction, you can get to commercial businesses, 5 minutes the other direction, you can. And there is not much place at all for that church. There is no parking in the front if you make that road wider. I'm not against the development. Rutherford County is fast growing. But that is a rural area, and I'm just hoping it stays that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Not seeing anyone, we'll close the comment period. Commissioners?
Doug, go.
Bogle?
Mr. Chairman, if I may for just a minute, just to have a couple of minutes of latitude to say a couple of things. As a planning commissioner, I know we all, and I don't want to speak for others in this group, that we all put forth our best effort to realize the impacts of people's properties and honor property rights and try to manage and plan for development. And for this particular development, I grew up out in this area, and I'm going to abstain from voting on this one. I'm completely neutral. I've been studying on this. I've known for years this was coming, but if I could just have a minute or two, just for, no one wants to hear my family history, but it's everyone's got to be from somewhere, and if you've been in Rutherford County 2 years or 100, and your family's been here more than 100 years, you have history and you have a piece of yourself somewhere. Well, that little piece of myself, my family's in the trades. We're not big landowners. We have small farms when I was growing up, but we're in the trades of HVAC, plumbing, electrical, and I'm in the trade as a civil engineer. My son's 5th generation in this county, and that house on that corner that I know is going to be torn down was built by my great-grandfather in 1952. I've been in it. I've heard music played in it. I've known the families that's owned it for my entire 52 years on this earth. And the reason why I can't vote is I know that progress goes forward. No matter how much my personal reasons would play into this, I can't deny it to move forward, but yet I can't be the one. I can't do that to my family to vote for that to be torn down. So I think it's the first time I've ever abstained from voting, but I'm so torn I just can't make it either way. But I want people to understand that I do that with every decision we make in here, and I think most of you do as well. And you know, like I said, 5 generations, if not more, and you know, hopefully we'll keep going with that. And whether you've been here 2 years or that much time. I know we all have something invested in this county. My family still lives a quarter mile from here. I had an opportunity to buy that 10 years ago, not that it would change anything, and just wasn't able to do it. But I appreciate the Swansons. I know there's compliments given to them, but they did clean it up. The previous owners let it go down, and so I do appreciate them doing that, so I can at least see it clean one more time. Thank you for the latitude.
I understand, Commissioner.
Doug, can you speak to Mr. Harney's concerns about the road and what the phasing of that looks like, and what that goal would look, what that in the process would be? And I don't disagree. There's a lot going on in that area, and not all the burden should be put on one, but I understand as it comes, we've got to go with it. But can you speak to that a little bit, please, sir?
I'll try it. Mike, feel free to jump in. A couple of things. Before I get to that part of it, I would like to point out one thing. We had some concern, and this isn't necessarily related to the road, but it's related to the property line on the north side of the property. You can kind of see where it kind of dips in a little bit right there. The applicant, if you look at the pattern book, the property doesn't show that little bit of a dip right through there. And the adjacent property owner actually had reached out to us and had asked about that as well. And we received a copy of the Alta survey that was done by the applicant as part of this project. And it does not show that little dip in there. And that was pretty much what the neighboring property owner thought as well, as that dip didn't actually exist. So if you wanted to notice, if you noticed the discrepancy between them, I just wanted to bring that up. I meant to mention that earlier and forgot about it. So I apologize. As far as the road improvements themselves, what they're looking to do is, basically dedicate right-of-way and make improvements along West Gum Road, and then also to realign that portion of that to Manchester Pike. I believe that's, Mike, in the first phases of the development, as I remember. So to kind of address Mr. Harney's concerns, that yes, and Mike's going to bring up, there is the phasing plan right there. You can kind of see that phase one, that color right there, shows the step field, the road alignment right through there, and then also some of the lots, of course, as part of that. But you can see the dedication on there and the improvements that we made to West Gum along the frontage of their property. So I think that should go a long way in addressing the concerns that Mr. Harney had as far as the timing of those improvements. Did that answer your question? Okay.
Now, if I'm reading that right, we're not talking about the entire length of that subdivision. They're giving right-of-way for future repair of the road. And I think what I heard Mr. Harney talk about was doing something with that road.
I think they're doing shoulder improvements along the entire length of their property, yes. We would ask them to do that, so, yes.
So there's the hill, the limited distance hill that they're talking about is right in this area. So with this road work and the first phase of the development, that hill would be brought down to make it a better sight distance, driving over the top of it. And then with each successive phase, we would add them, have them widen the road as they go.
Mr. Chair, I have a hard time with the commercial zoning also, being in a rural area and with no plan of what's going in there. I have an issue with the smaller lots that the experts in the water department and the utility department have said that they have had issues with the smaller lots that are also professionals in the field. And again, this can be developed, or it will probably be developed, and everyone's talked about the need of the improvement of the road, but I think they can do better with this site than the commercial in the front with no plan and the smaller lots, which I feel like they're trying to sneak it in before we can make our plans solid for the future of Rutherford County. Before the commission can complete the comprehensive plan for the county, I feel like they're trying to sneak it in before we get it done.
Let me jump in there just a minute, because I don't want to come down as being harsh toward the Swanson family. I've mentioned working with them for years. I have full confidence that between them and Matt, they will do whatever we got them to do. The issue I have is we're just not clear on how we're going to make this work. We've all been in meetings. We're all having heartburn. We've got a lot of houses that's going to go in on this piece of property. I have no doubt about that. But man, I just feel like if they don't do commercial now and they put those houses in, you're going to have folks from all over the country that's going to come up here, and we're going to debate and hash about a heat and air company trying to go in on that site, that they're trying to have foresight and plan ahead to put some type of business on that site. But for me, this project, we got a golden opportunity to pull some folks together and see if there's a way we can use a model here and see if we can get this right. And right now, we're not right. We're not ready for this is where we're at. There's no way that I could say that I'm ready after all the different meetings that we've had, but we got a local developer, a local family, local engineer, and a local planning commission. This one, to me, seems to be in need of being deferred and put us in a room and let's discuss what we really need to be doing to get it right.
Mr. Chairman, I kind of second everything that my fellow planning commissioner just said. I trust Matt, I trust the Swanson family, but if you look at where this is, it's way out. I mean, it's way out. It's a very rural area, very, very rural, and not even close to any urban development that's going on. And that's exactly what we've been talking about for the last couple of years, is this type of development out in rural areas. That's a beautiful piece of property. It begs to be developed, but it also begs to be developed in the right way in a more rural setting, in my mind, with larger lots. The commercial deal actually sounds like it has some opposition from neighborhoods, but long term it may even benefit the community. But laying all that aside, this is not close to any of the urban boundaries that I know of. It's way out in the county, and to put this type of urban development in a rural area, in my mind, is just inappropriate. And Doug, if I'm not mistaken, you mentioned setbacks, and some of these setbacks doesn't even meet the guidelines that we have right now. Is that correct? 35 feet, and we're looking at 40 feet.
Well, that was one of the, that was something that we brought up at our last work session about the setbacks, as requiring minimum, just keeping it at 40 and 10 for the sides as well. Now, again, we haven't come to consensus on that, but it is less than what we would normally require in a conventionally zoned RM subdivision.
This is a tough thing for me to say, but I move to deny the request.
Motion to deny. Do I have a second? I have a second. Further discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I heard from Matt and I heard from Mr. Swanson that they're willing to work, and I know you've been through a lot of discussions already with them, and I would definitely default to you as our county planner on what's going on and what's taking place. But I understand the sentiments, Commissioner Bogle. I understand where you're coming from, and that rings loud as well. But I would like to at least to see an opportunity. If they sat here and told us right there that they're willing to do more than what's on paper tonight, if I've heard that correctly, I would more entertain the motion with Commissioner Phillip or Commissioner Thompson to look at more of a deferral for whatever length of time there and try to get this right. Is where I stand right now. Thank you.
If that's a suggestion to defer to work on larger lot sizes.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
If that's your wish, and I think I heard Commissioner Thompson say pretty much the exact same thing, I'll withdraw my motion to deny and allow someone to put that motion and to defer for reconsideration. In my mind, it has to be larger lot sizes. I ask to remove my motion to deny.
Second.
Chairman, I make a motion that we defer this for further consideration, and I do agree. I'd like to see the larger lot sizes incorporated in this development. Other than that, I wouldn't have any issues with voting for this. So, but for now, I make a recommendation to deny, subject to staff comments and all the discussion here tonight.
Make a motion to defer.
Defer, yes, sir.
Okay. Have a second? Have a second. Further discussion?
And once again, now that I've kind of gathered myself back up, I understand development and progress and moving forward, so that's why I'm just completely neutral on this one, just for the reasons stated earlier. So,
all right. Madam Secretary, call the roll.
Jeff Phillips.
Yes.
Mike Cush. Yes. Charlotte P. Yes. Trey Gooch. Yes. Chip Pinion. Yes. Jim Thompson. Yes. Pettis Reed.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion was made to defer. Moving now into item was 4, now 5. Feel like an auctioneer. All right, we're going now. This is also with SEC Incorporated for Ayoku Properties, LLC, REZ 24019, location 7052 West Gum Road, Commissioner District 6, Jonathan Beverly. Size of sites approximately 53 acres, tax map 150, parcels 20, 2002, 2003, 2004, 20.05. Existing zoning, residential median density. Proposed zoning is planned unit development PUD for retreat. Mr. DeMasi.
Yes, sir. Thank you. The property at this subject property has been the subject of several rezoning or zoning requests in the past. Things for like a horse stable, conference center, second residential unit on the property. This property, along with several others, as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, at the beginning, have been purchased by the applicant for the Ayoku Healing Retreat Center. There's a lot of information about this, and the applicant is present to discuss in a little more detail about what exactly this is. But there'll be a wide variety of different uses and amenities on this property. The retreat center will house a renovated conference center that can hold up to about 250 people, although their typical events are between 50 and 100. A yoga studio, a spa, bathhouse. The plan also proposes a bungalow village housing up to 96 guests. Again, typical numbers usually between 30 and 50. They're also including a variety of recreational facilities such as pickleball courts, basketball courts, hiking trails, etc. There will be community events on the property from time to time. However, the facility is meant to be private. It would not allow general and or public use. One of the concerns that we had on this particular project, should it be approved, was if for some reason it were to be, let's say it got approved and then what you're seeing here didn't happen and someone came in and wanted to just use it for weddings and similar type events, we actually had them place a statement in the pattern book stating that those kind of events are not what's anticipated here, and if that were the case, they would have to come back through the PUD amendment process again, should this be approved. A concept plan is included with your pattern book. That's basically what Mike has up on the screen, so you can see the location of the activities, again, a variety of activities here on this application. Access to this property will be along West Gum Road. Again, the reason we wanted to see this application second was due to the road improvements that were being proposed with the last application. Those are still kind of up in the air based on the action that was just taken. With that, that's going to play into, some potential road improvements that this facility would have to make as well. Non-residential plan developments do not require open space to be set aside. Although the primary use of this facility is non-residential in nature, their concept plan does show a large amount of open space being maintained, as you can see in the pattern book, about 26 acres or about 50% of the site. Of course, an engineered site plan would be required, showing the landscape plan, as well as any of the new buildings, parking areas, et cetera. That would all have to meet county requirements. And of course, our performance standards would have to be adhered to as well. This is a unique project. We've considered applications for retreats in the past, but nothing quite like the activities being proposed in this application. With that, I will state that Matt Taylor will be representing this application as well, and the applicants are present. Something that was brought up that Jason Laxon and myself from CUD were discussing a little earlier tonight regarded the septic on the site. Of course, you see that they're showing a step field. However, this is meant to be a private step system, not one that would be owned and maintained by CUD, because it's basically a single user in a sense, even though there's a wide variety of activities here on the property. This is all really one project. Now, something that I did, and Jason and I did talk about, was the fact that if there's some reason this would ever split, if the properties were to ever be divided somehow, at that point, CUD would have to be involved, because that would be more of a public type of a facility at that point. But there's nothing in the pattern book that would indicate that that's going to happen, and this is all pretty much a self-contained property here. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. And Mike, if you wanted to chime in on anything, I would gladly turn it over to you.
Yeah, so they did perform a traffic study, but we made the assumption that the cove would be underway as well. So we're going to ask them to reevaluate without the cove project moving forward. So that means we still have problems with the awkward intersection at Gum and Manchester Highway. We still have problems with that limited sight distance hill. We still have problems with a narrow Gum Road itself. So there are several issues that need to be addressed with this if this stands alone. So that's where we got a little kink in the flaw in the slaw.
Commissioners, any questions, comments for our staff? Not, we'll ask that the applicant can come forward. Matt Taylor from SEC.
Thank you. Matt Taylor from SEC, 850 Middle Tennessee Boulevard, Murfreesboro, Tennessee. To address Doug's question about the step, it is all one single user / owner. So right now there are a couple different parcels. We would combine all those, and all this would be operated under a single step and or septic system. Outside of that, I think Doug did a good job. You know, there are, describing the overall project. It's probably a little hard to describe. I don't know that I've ever been to a site or a program or a facility quite like this, but it's a mixture of corporate event center to Zen to yoga, a lot of different elements going on. It's really meant for people to come in and kind of recharge their batteries as life beats them down, if you will. And so you've got anything from athletic, like basketball or pickleball, to things that are very relaxing, like yoga, massage, or just being outdoors, walking in trails through the woods. It's quite different than anything else that we have proposed since I've been here for 20 years. There are some overnight cabins. I think there's 36 maximum here, and most of the time, normal events, we would anticipate that to be utilize about 15 or 20 of those. Our maximum capacity of people in the conference center itself would be about 250, but most of our events we would anticipate to run between 50 and 100 people. You could be here for multiple days, or it could just be a single day in and single day out. It's very much up to that end user and how they want to use the facility. We have tried to buffer where we can our neighbors. We do have a single entrance off Gum Road. We've got some landscaping planned there. We tried to pull that access road away from our neighbors as soon as we could there. And then we tried to leave vegetation around the perimeter as well. We are planning to utilize a few of the existing buildings on site that were previously constructed, I think, for some previous wedding venues. However, not all the existing buildings will stay. We'll build several new ones. Outside of that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. I've got a couple of people from my applicant here who could probably describe the end use a little, the programming better than I can if you're interested in hearing that. Otherwise, I'll try to answer any questions.
Commissioners?
Matt, we looked at this second after the first one that you talked about with Mr. Swanson's development. Since that has not been approved at this particular point in time, what's your plans for Gum Road?
I think that we probably need to sit down with Mike and his group and, update the traffic study however he wants that updated. Based on our previous discussions, we had performed it assuming that the cove was going to be there. So I know we know that there's some things to be addressed there. Obviously, we don't control the property to realign Gum. I think there's some other contributions or other ways to address that with this project, but I think that is probably a discussion we need to have with staff.
Do you prefer this to be deferred until that discussion has been had?
I think so. I'd like to hear any other comments, concerns, or thoughts on the project, but I think that given the concerns of Gum Road, I think that's probably our only viable option forward.
Have the neighbors been contacted, and what do they think about the retreat in the neighborhood?
We hosted like with all of our PUDs, we hosted a neighborhood meeting. I was not at that particular one, but I think it was fairly well attended. I think about the same people came out as that came out for the Cove. I think that my understanding is a lot of questions were answered. People want to know what was this retreat center, and my clients did a very good job at that meeting describing, all the activities and kind of their how this came about, and so I think that relieved. I've not had a single phone call since that neighborhood meeting. I think Rob had one, and it was. I think talking about the property, I forget the exact concern, but it sounded like it was more of a follow-up question than it was a concern. I think Doug was there. He can correct me if I'm misspoken about any of that, but
Actually,
that was my understanding.
I wasn't at that one either. My assistant director was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I would, based on what I remember her telling me about it, I would concur with kind of his assessment that there were a lot of questions, but similar to Matt, I think I may have gotten maybe one phone call about this, not just a whole lot of public input to our office on this.
Anyone else?
Doug, or Matt, Doug, Mike, one thing I would like to be considered if we do defer this or when it's looked at is to make sure from a discussion perspective with CUD that yes, this is intended to be a separate or a private, but if something ever happened to this and it was subdivided and, just take into consideration maybe trying to build this or consider, because per the charter, I believe with CUD that this becomes, if it was split, it technically becomes public. And if it's not to our standards, that would be a discussion we'd rather have now than later if possible. So.
Yes, sir.
And I think it'd be very hard to split, to be honest with you, Commissioner, simply because we only have that one way in and out. But happy to have the conversation.
Matt, are y'all requesting that we just go ahead and defer this to?
I think I would rather go ahead and have the public hearing if there's anybody from the public here, and there might be, maybe I'm wrong, maybe there's additional questions I can address from them afterwards.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll move into the public hearing. And if anyone would like to come forward, and we'll give you those 3 minutes to voice your opinion. We ask you to come forward this time. I'd like to have your name and address, please.
Spencer Benedict, 7116 West Gum Road, Murfreesboro. New to the area. We just moved here about a year and a half ago in March. Absolutely love where we live right there. My biggest concern, they've been addressed tonight, is the traffic on Gum Road, how narrow it is. And I've kind of got a double dose because I've got Gum Road and then the single gravel road coming to this other project. I share that property line, and it goes behind, so I'm getting hit on all three sides. Not opposed to the projects a bit. I just I want you guys to really consider the main is the traffic flow and the privacy out there, so I don't know what we'll do about it. I mean, I just want that to be a big deal with that single gravel road with the way to get in to their project and then coming behind my house also. Like I say, absolutely love that place. I hope they can get all that worked out where those projects can continue. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? There's no one else. We'll close the public comment. Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, I move to defer for further traffic discussion and study for Gum Road.
Have a second. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? It has been deferred. Commissioners, this has been an interesting one, but we have really covered Gum Road tonight. Quite interesting. Just yesterday, I got an email concerning these properties, and it was concerning a cemetery that the Swanson properties are located on, and they thought the cemetery was on this one, but it's not there. It's across interstate on the other properties. But what's interesting about that, the mother of Judy Garland's father is buried over there. I don't know how many of you knew that, but Judy Garland's father come from Gum. So I thought that was quite interesting, but after conversations there, I talked to him. Staff reports and other business.
No specific reports, just to reiterate that following our next meeting on July 22nd, we will convene in room 205 to continue our discussion on PUDs and easements and things.
You'll mention Thursday night.
Yes, thank you, sir. Yes, this Thursday, as hopefully you're all aware, we will be having a joint work session with the Board of Commissioners. So it'll be the Board of Commissioners, Planning Commission, and the Plan Rutherford Steering Committee. That will be at MTSU starting at 6 o'clock. We'll be set up prior to that, so obviously you can come a little early. But we're going to go over the plan as it is to this point, you know, the public input that's been heard and the recommendations made. It is a work session. It is not no decisions are going to be made. It's just kind of to give you an idea of where things are right now and how things are going to continue to progress. Again, that'll be at MTSU. That'll be in the same building where we had the town hall last year back in August. I believe it's the Construction Science and Concrete School of Concrete and Construction Management. Thank you. I never can get that right. But that's at 6 o'clock. It'll be in that same room. Hope to see you all there because it's going to be a lot of information, but it's very timely, and a lot of input's gone into this. So look forward to seeing you all there this Thursday at 6 o'clock.
Thank you, sir. I have no other business. If not, we are adjourned.